So anytime you're comfortable.
My name is Catherine Sugg. This painting is titled It's a Bitch Being a Cow. I got my BFA at UNLV in Las Vegas, and originally I'm from Saskatchewan, Canada. I'm currently working towards my MFA at the University of Montana. I use the elk as a metaphor. My primary reasoning was appropriating a symbol that's recognizable within the state. You'll see the romantic portrayal of the masculine bull elk standing on the hill with the steam out of his nostrils and the sun on the antlers. And with this piece, I was looking at the female elk as the less recognized, and also using her as a metaphor for the roles that are particular to women within certain regions. In this specific piece, the aspects of the metaphor that I mentioned, that I'm dealing with most specifically, is a reference to the lead cow in elk populations. She has a functional role in terms of warning the herd if danger approaches. According to some of the texts that I've looked at, she's ostracized in the sense that she is no longer part of the functioning reproductive cycle. She might act as an ant, or she might act as an easy kill for a hunter because she's off by herself. As far as the way that the canvases are constructed, usually I look at two different types of surfaces to use. I'll appropriate surfaces that have a context within a certain era. So in that sense, I'm using things like a dish towel or pot holders that have actually been created by another woman's hand. And those items are paralleled with contemporary prints that I'll find in any fabric store. Usually I do a little bit of hunting around because the fabrics and the patterns of the fabric have a pretty specific intent as far as the content is concerned. I draw a great degree of the content from the fabric patterns that I appropriate. Obviously I sew everything by hand. It's important for me to place as much value on that choice to actually embrace the tedium of that particular domestic art that isn't necessarily celebrated as much as to embrace the tedium involved in minuscule details associated with oil painting. A relatively recent tool that I've been using is actually working back into the pieces with an embroidery needle. And so I use the embroidery as a chance to present both text, and I use it as another way of adding a different line quality. Being a small town raised gal, I grew up surrounded by crocheted items that were laid on the table whenever guests came over. And I've learned to appreciate lace and especially the workmanship involved in creating those items. And as one who's had an education to actually not just accept that which I've been given by my predecessors, but to reevaluate it, I use the drawn lace as an opportunity to show both the honoring of the tradition and the questioning. Text is a very important element. If I'm including text, it's always embroidered. The tedium involved with the embroidery forces me to be very careful about what I choose to include. In this case, I've written the text, "Hot rolls," repeatedly. Anyone who really spends any degree of time with this work could actually infer the meaning once they look at some of the iconography that's there. For the most part, I treat the surfaces with clear gesso. Sometimes I will do washes with white gesso, usually mixed with a little bit of water because I don't want to lose the background information. The nature of the fabric is usually pretty frustrating to deal with because it doesn't necessarily always act according to plan. More often than not, when I stretch a painting, I'll have to pull it off and restretch it or restretch certain aspects of it. And that's really frustrating because it can be pretty tedious and it's impossible to predict how some of the older fabrics will stretch. And I do have instances where some of the really old stuff will rip, and so I have to stop stretching and go back in and patch it up with stitch work and then be a little bit more careful and overlay. So there's definitely technical issues related to the piece. Sometimes I don't gesso the entire surface. The doilies themselves are not gessoed, or the pot holders. When I gesso those, they tend to, I guess, lose a lot of the multi-layered quality and the viscosity of the actual fabric itself. Gets flattened by the material. It's important to me that my audiences are aware that the pieces are not just about elk, but primarily about illustrating roles and roles as they pertain to a region. The piece is the actual dimensions of a full-size bed, the full-size bed being that which was most common in rural communities, and especially ranch homes, was the size of bed that was considered acceptable for a married couple. I often wonder how my parents managed to fit both my sister and I in there on nights when we had bad dreams.